So today's video is about something that was very confusing for me when I came in UK a couple of years ago. I thought I'd make a video about it because now I have more experience living here and I understand the culture and people better now. So I thought, why not I make a video about this specific topic of British passive aggressiveness. So it's very confusing for people from outside of UK because obviously they are not very familiar with the culture here, but it's something that locals take pride in mastering. I'm gonna show you, walk you through what it means, why they do that, and how to spot it and how to respond to it. So, you know, it's that strange cultural art of sounding polite while actually you're expressing your annoyance, criticism, or disapproval. Okay, so it's when someone says, oh, that's very interesting, but what they actually mean is, oh, that's terrible, that's awful. I know it's very confusing, and well, it's not this extreme that I'm saying, but you'll get the gist of it. Something opposite of interesting. Okay, so, or for example, when you get an email that says, just following up on my last message, it actually means, why are you ignoring me? Hi, it's Negi and welcome back to my channel. So this video is honestly one of those videos that I wish I came across earlier in my life in the UK. So I've been living in the UK for about a decade now, and there's one thing I still find fascinating, confusing, and honestly kind of brilliant, and that's British passive aggressiveness, which is not outright hostility. Well, it's quiet and it's calm and, you know, perfectly wrapped in politeness. And today we are going to unpack it, what it is, why it exists, where it comes from, how to recognize passive aggressiveness, how to handle it, and maybe most importantly, why it's such an integral part of British culture. So what is passive aggressiveness? What does it actually mean? At its core, being passive aggressive means expressing anger, frustration, or resistance indirectly instead of saying it openly. So it's kind of an emotional camouflage, if I'm pronouncing that word correctly. A passive aggressive person might avoid conflict by hiding irritation behind polite phrases or jokes or silence. So they're upset, but they won't admit it directly because that would be rude and un-British. So instead, they will smile and they say, oh no, I'm fine, in a tone that tells you they are absolutely not fine. A socially acceptable way to express emotion while maintaining the country's most sacred value, which is politeness. Hearing things like, don't make a fuss, or be polite, or keep calm and carry on. That conditioning leads to a society where being direct can feel almost threatening. So instead of saying, you've upset me, a British person might say, well, that was brave. Like, it's not like they're expressing what they mean openly. To understand British passive aggressiveness, you have to understand Britain itself. So Britain is a culture that prizes emotional restraint, understatement, and politeness. So historically, showing too much emotion, whether anger or enthusiasm, was seen as unrefined. Centuries of social hierarchy trained people to communicate carefully. So if you were lower in status, you couldn't openly challenge someone above you, right? You had to find subtle ways of expressing your disapproval or disagreement. And that's how indirect communication became part of the national character. Finally, there's humor. The British are the masters of irony and sarcasm. Humor gives permission to say difficult things but with a smile. So when someone says, "Oh, how clever of you to think of that," they could mean it sincerely or not. So that ambiguity is part of the fun. Okay, I want to tell you how this shows up in everyday life from my own experience. So let's walk you through a few everyday examples to make it more clear for you if it's not clear so far. The first example that I came across is the queue. So as you may already know, the queue is sacred in Britain. So if someone cuts in line, you'll rarely hear someone says, "Excuse me, the back of the queue is there." Instead, you'll get that sharp stares, loud sighs, or I don't know, muttered, some people are blah 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 blah, loud enough for everyone to hear it except the person it's aimed at. Another example I came across. So British work emails are a goldmine for passive aggression, honestly. And you'll get phrases like, "Per my last email," or "just a gentle reminder," or "thanks in advance." So these all sound polite, right? But they carry a clear subtext. So "per my last email" basically means you clearly didn't read what I said. "Just a gentle reminder" means I've reminded you 3 times already. And I don't know, the last one I said, "thanks in advance," means you'd better do this. Another example is the compliments they give each other. So a compliment can often be a disguised critic. So someone might say, "Oh, that's a bold outfit," which could either mean you look great or you look ridiculous. So it's all in the tone. When a Brit says, "It's fine," it's probably not fine. So when they say, "No worries," there are definitely worries. And when they say, "I don't want to be a bother," they already feel bothered. Another example is the everyday politeness. So the word "sorry" is another big one. Brits say sorry when someone else bumps into them. And that's very interesting, actually. So it's used to smooth over awkwardness, to keep social harmony, but also sometimes to express quiet disapproval. So if someone says sorry in a certain tone, it doesn't mean they didn't hear you. It means, "Excuse me, what did you just say?" What's really going on underneath all of this politeness? So here are a few unspoken rules that shape British communication. Never make anyone uncomfortable. Even if you're angry, the goal is to keep calm and appear calm. Don't draw attention to yourself. Being too emotional, too direct, or too loud is considered embarrassing. Politeness equals control. So if you stay polite, you keep the upper hand, and losing your temper basically means losing the game. Ambiguity protects you. So if you phrase something vaguely, you can always claim you didn't mean it that way. So humor is another thing which makes everything easier. So wrap criticism in humor and you can say almost anything. So before we roll our eyes at British indirectness, let's admit something. There's a kind of genius to it, I think. Passive aggressiveness, at least the British variety, is not always cruel. It can be a social lubricant, so it allows people to express discomfort or disapproval without open conflict. So, for example, if someone is being rude in a meeting, instead of starting a fight, you can just say, "Well, that's one way to look at it." So you've already registered your disagreement without escalating it, without escalating that, tension in the workplace or wherever. So it's also a safety valve, I think. Many Brits genuinely dislike confrontation. This indirect style allows people to maintain peace while still venting a little. And I think that's genius. It's the national compromise, basically avoid chaos but still get your feelings across, but quietly and politely and not directly. But it comes a point that it turns toxic. So when everything is wrapped in politeness, it can become impossible to know what people actually mean. So issues go unresolved. Resentment builds up. Workplaces can become full of subtle sniping instead of open communication. I think at its worst, passive aggressiveness turns into a kind of emotional manipulation, which basically is saying one thing while meaning another thing. So the other person feels confused or guilty all the time. For example, someone might say, "Oh, don't worry, I'll do it myself," which sounds kind and selfless, right? But is really meant to make you feel bad for not helping in that situation. Or they might say, "I was only joking," after saying something hurtful. That's a classic move, using humor as a shield so they can deny responsibility. How should we recognize this? How should we recognize passive aggressiveness? If you've ever left a conversation feeling slightly confused, like you were just insulted, but you can't quite prove it, that's passive aggression. So here are some common signs that you can understand and realize. A polite tone, but sharp phrasing. Backhanded compliments, like, "You're surprisingly good at this." Vague criticism that you can't respond to, like, "Oh, some people just don't get it." The silent treatment. Over apologizing, literally sorry for existing. Doing something deliberately slowly to show your annoyance. Agreeing verbally but acting oppositely later. So once you start to spot this, you'll see it everywhere, from family dinners to workplace Slack messages to customer service conversations, literally everywhere. The important thing is, now that you've realized what it is and what are the signs, the important thing is how to respond to it. Here's the tricky part. You can't fight British passive aggression with more aggression. That only escalates things and you come across as a rude person and very direct person. What should you do? What can you do in this kind of situations? First of all, stay calm and neutral. Don't match the tone. Stay polite but clear. Second, ask directly but gently. If someone says something ambiguous, you can ask them, "Just to check, what did you really mean by that?" So most passive aggressive people backtrack immediately once you shine a light on their behavior. How to respond, number 3. Use humor. A light joke can diffuse tension. For example, if someone says, "Interesting outfit," you can literally reply with, "Thank you, I like to keep things interesting." 4 is to set boundaries. So if it's constant, it's okay to say, "I prefer if we just say things directly." You can be kind and firm at the same time. Number 5 is do not overanalyze every single comment, because sometimes people are just awkward, not malicious. It's easy to assume everything has a hidden meaning, but sometimes nice weather is really just small talk and nothing malicious behind it. What this says about Britain as a culture. British passive aggressiveness actually tells you a lot about how the country works. It reflects a society that values order, manners, and emotional control. It's about maintaining social harmony, never ever causing a scene. So in some ways, it's part of Britain's charm. It's why the humor is dry, why the sarcasm is world-class, and why even conflict sounds poetic. But it also reveals an emotional restraint that can make honest communication very difficult. It's a culture where people apologize for existing, where "I don't want to bother" is a code for "I'm deeply frustrated and where everyone pretends to be fine even when they're not fine. So the best communication, British or otherwise, happens when you can be kind and direct at the same time. Nice and direct at the same time. So it's possible to disagree without being rude and to express feelings without sugarcoating everything into oblivion. Brits have mastered the art of saying things without saying them. The challenge now is learning when to actually say them. Because politeness should never come at the cost of clarity. Here are a few principles that you have to keep in mind. You have to always listen for the tone, not just the words that people say. Meaning often hides between the lines. So if in doubt, assume goodwill. Not every "that's interesting" is meant as an insult. Be kind but clear. So clarity is politeness too. Don't be afraid to ask for meaning of the sentences or things that other people tell you. It's okay to seek understanding. And learn to laugh at it. British humour thrives on irony, and sometimes the best response is to just smile and move on, or give them the silent treatment. So, British passive-aggressiveness is one of those things that sound ridiculous until you live here. And then you realize it's everywhere. So if you're not from here, you probably won't understand what I'm saying. But if you've been living here, you would. So it's how people complain without complaining. It's how they show annoyance without breaking politeness. It's a way to stay civil in a society that fears confrontation but loves irony. It can be frustrating, confusing, and even hilarious, but it's also deeply human. It's what happens when politeness, humor, and repression mix together in one national personality. So next time someone says, "If that's what you want," or "that's brave," or "no worries," you've just witnessed a piece of British cultural magic. The polite way to be rude. I hope this video helped you. Please let me know what you think, and let me know about your experiences here. I would love to read your comments, stories, whatever, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!